Hey, welcome back. And if you're new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Christina Kent, and I'm a fine artist based out of San Francisco. And in this video today, I wanted to talk a little bit about one of my recent favorite painters and do a study of his work, and that painter is John Register. John Register is a California painter. He has been described as the California Edward Hopper, and I think from his work you can see why. He was painting a lot around the 1950s, and he did a lot of scenes of American interior spaces, so lots of diners, lots of homes, and a lot of his scenes are marked by a sense of quietness, a beautiful sense of light, and a sense of solitude that is sometimes melancholy, other times more just peaceful. But what really draws me to his work is his ability to capture light. In some of the paintings, the light is very strong, but in other paintings, the light is really soft and subtle. And that's what I want to focus on in this master study that I'm going to do today. So I'm going to be focusing on this painting of his. I believe it's called The Rooming House. And what really drew me to this one was the subtle, soft light and the rainbow of colors that we see in the grays. So if you saw my recent video where I did a sketch of a white object on a white table, and I was getting into all of the subtle hues and shades that we have in neutrals, or if you saw my video on mixing grays, you know that I've been really interested lately in trying to explore the beauty within these neutral, subtle colors. So I think that Register's painting here is a great example of that. And so I wanted to do a little sketch, a little color study of the painting to get a better idea of how he managed that in his piece. After sketching out the major shapes that I'm seeing, then I start to go in with the paint. And as usual, I start with the darkest shapes first, and then I move on to the lighter shapes. So here I'm mixing a very sort of almost purplish dark tone, very close to black, and I start to fill in where I'm seeing some of the darker shapes. And I also start with the right side of the painting because I oftentimes like to start with the more complex areas in terms of drawing and then move on to the simpler areas later on. So I'm going to handle the right side of the painting first and then go on to the left. I love how this figure is sort of silhouetted by the light coming in through the window behind him. So he's almost like this just one large dark mass with just a few details to hint at his face and hands. So I block in one large shape for him and the chair, and then I'll add the subtlety of those details later on. As I move on to the next darkest colors, I'm looking at the shadows behind the man. So the shadows being cast by the kitchen appliances, and I love how even in those shadows, there's some beautiful purples and blues that make them really alive. The shadows on the walls behind the man next to the window are also really rich browns. So I create a nice, rich, saturated mixture of brown for those. And then on top of those, I layer on a slightly lighter yellow to sort of gradually shift the hue and give us a sense of that soft light. And I want to note that in the reference photo, there's a little bit of glare. I wasn't able to find a reproduction of this image online, so I just took a photo from my art book, but there is a little bit of glare, so you may notice that my painting is a little bit darker on the top area than it appears in this photo I'm showing in the video. I also mix a deep saturated red to subtly suggest the features of the man in shadow. Moving on to the lighter tones, I mix a nice pastel blue for the part of the stove that's getting hit by that cool daylight. And for the window, I noticed that Register has put a slightly pastel yellow on the edge of the window, and then we have just a very bright white of the light from outside. Once I'm pretty happy with the colors on the right side of the painting, then I move over to paint the left side. And this is the part that I was most interested in because here it looks like it's a wall that's probably painted one color, but due to the situation of the light, there's actually a lot of beautiful subtle shifts in color and hue that are happening. I love the blues in this painting, like the deep saturated blue that Register has for the part of the chair that's getting hit by that blue light. And similarly, the wall on the lower left side is also a really nice, deep, saturated blue that just sort of glows. As we move vertically up the wall, the colors shift a bit into a slightly warmer, slightly more red or purple color that's a bit less saturated. It's a bit more neutralized than the blue towards the bottom. And so I try to mix a nice sort of mellow purplish color for that part of the wall. I keep my colors a little bit darker when I first put them down because I know that I can layer the lighter colors on top to create that sense of glowing light. Moving further up the wall, the colors shift even more, a little bit towards pink and eventually even towards a yellow or a yellowish orange. And now, as I mentioned, the photo I took had some glare, so the top part of the painting from when I was looking at the picture directly in the book is a little bit darker than what you'll see in the reference here. As I paint higher up on the wall, I shift more towards these warmer, browner, a bit more orangey colors compared to the cooler pinker and blue tones I was using on the lower part. And once I've painted in that gradual color shift, then I add a little bit more lightness. I go in and bring some of those lighter notes to the wall to give it a bit more of a sense of luminosity. I feel like Register is so good at creating that luminosity in his work, and so I add a few more lighter notes to really try to bring out the glow. Once I've added these lighter notes, then I feel like I've reached a good point in this study. I'm really happy with how I was able to capture some of those subtle color shifts, and of course it's not going to be as good as Register's painting. This is just a quick sketch. It's just to get an idea of some of his color transitions and how he depicts light in this scenario, but I feel like through simple sketches like these, we can learn so much from our favorite painters and what makes their paintings great. So if there's a painter whose work you love and you really want to learn from them, then I would highly recommend finding one of their paintings and doing a small color study to try to understand how they approach their painting. Even in just an hour or even as short as a 30-minute sketch, you can learn so much. And over time, studies like these can have a profound impact on your art practice. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. If you liked it, let me know in the comments below, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more art videos. And as always, I want to give a huge shout out to my supporters on Patreon. Thank you so much for supporting this channel and making these videos happen. This channel doesn't have any regular sponsors, so if you want to support my videos, please consider joining my Patreon. As a member of my Patreon, you also get to watch my videos early and ad-free, so be sure to check it out. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.